This is Derke, currently the duelist player for the best team in the world, Fnatic. In this video, we'll be explaining pistols in 4 different levels, starting from the beginner level and making our way up to pro to see the difference between Derke and ourselves. To start off, let's look at Tilly, who's ranked bronze and is playing Harbor on Pearl. If we hop into the first round of this game, we can see that Tilly's team has 3 members towards B-long and 2 towards mid. After a bit of fighting towards double doors and spotting both the enemy Reyna and Raze, Tilly opts to fall back. Unfortunately, the Gecko dies mid. With the spike now dropped in mid plaza, Tilly's team sprints up street in hopes of retrieving the spike. This is when Tilly decides to hop onto the box and shop and is caught off guard when the sage is much closer than expected. This is where Tilly makes a common pistol mistake that many beginner levels make. In a panic state, Tilly immediately starts moving backwards and falls off the box while shooting their ghost as quickly as possible. The combination of these 2 bad habits makes it so that the bullets coming from Tilly's ghost have a near impossible chance of landing anywhere near his crosshair. This is due to 2 game mechanics: firing error as well as movement error. First, firing error is when our bullets aren't accurate because the weapon is not given enough time between shots to allow the recoil to fully reset. As you can see, the ghost bullets become much more accurate whenever there's some time in between each shot. Second, movement error is when our bullets aren't accurate because we're still moving as we fire. Valorant is a game where in a large majority of your fights, you must be standing still before you shoot. If you're not, you risk destroying your accuracy and rolling the dice in nearly every engagement. Obviously, these are key principles for all weapons, but are even more important when it comes to pistols such as the Ghost. The Ghost on unarmored opponents takes 4 body shots to kill and 5 body shots on armored targets. For a semi-auto gun, this is just way too much time to spend shooting a target, whereas you can just hit 1 single headshot to kill an unarmored target, or 2 if they do have armor. Most pistols reward players who opt for quality shots rather than quantity. And if you're looking to make sure your shots are as high quality as they can be, it's important that you're practicing all of the proper fundamentals that make it as easy as possible to land your shots. Those clips that you see pro players landing in their games every day might feel impossible to you as you're starting out, but by just applying a couple of basic habits, you can master aim in Valorant and start landing clips in no time. Luckily, that's where we come in. With our brand new Spider Method course over at SkillCapped, we'll break down exactly what habits you should start building up today to immediately transform your gameplay. Unlike other coaching platforms, in our courses, we give you actionable advice that you can apply literally in your next match to start climbing. We do this so that you know exactly what it is you need to do to improve, without just being fed generic advice from one of the hundreds of other coaches on YouTube. In fact, we believe in our coaching so much, we offer your money back if you don't climb while actively using our service. We'll get you caught up to speed in no time and climbing the ranks. Don't believe us? Give it a shot with no risk using the link in the description below. For our second beginner, we have Astrocity, who's ranked bronze and is playing Neon on Lotus. However, the mistake Astrocity makes here is not what they do during the pistol round, but instead is what they do before. If we take a look at the buy phase of both the pistol rounds, we can see that in the first round, Astrocity has 400 credits left over, and in both rounds, shies away from upgrading his pistol. To focus on the first round, a general rule of thumb is that on the pistol round, you should never save any credits that could be spent on an extra ability, light shield, or a weapon. The amount of leftover credits you have during the pistol round should be as close to 0 as possible. The pistol round is arguably one of the most important rounds in all of Valorant, since you can easily snowball it into 2 or 3 more rounds. Why go into one of the most important rounds of the match without being as strong as you possibly can be? This may have been a lapse of not paying attention, but still, this does not excuse the amount of wasted strength you'll be missing going into the pistol round. Thankfully, in the second pistol round, Astrocity does spend as much of their credits as possible. However, what those credits were spent on was not ideal. Before making your pistol round purchase, there are some key factors that one must think about that dictate what you'll be buying: what agent you're playing, what map you're on, as well as what position you'll be playing during the round. So let's go through this exact process as if we're deciding what to buy. First, we're playing Neon, who is a duelist. Your agent role will heavily affect what you favor for pistol rounds. Duelists are looking to take fights and set themselves up with whatever utility they have to make these duelists safe. So with this in mind, the things that help with this singular goal are either to have a stronger weapon or to have armor so they can take more damage. Opting for different pistols or even armor would help a lot here, since they will likely be the first line of contact. If Astrocity was playing a different agent, such as Sova, whose goal as an initiator is to set up his teammates to take favorable duels, they would prioritize their credits towards buying their abilities, such as Owl Drone. Now that we've established that, we now must figure out which option to choose. This is where looking at the map and what positions you'll be taking comes into play. If we take a moment to see where Atrocity's team is positioned, they're planning to push towards A site. The initial duels that take place in this area of Lotus are going to be fighting players in these common positions, which are roughly 25 to 35 meters. So we want to prioritize pistols that are strong at these ranges, such as the Ghost or Sheriff. There aren't a lot of reasons to buy a weapon such as the Frenzy or Shorty if you know that the upcoming fights will be at medium to long range. So now that we've thought about our pistol purchase, a solid pistol round buy that we can go for as a Neon in this position would be a Ghost and a Stun. We now have a weapon that is going to be instantly effective for the duels we'll be taking, as well as having our Stun to help set ourselves up for upcoming fights. Remember, pistol rounds start from the buy phase, not when the barriers go down. For our intermediate level, we have Warp Sonic, who is Platinum ranked and is playing Jet on Bind. One thing that we would love to point out is how Warp Sonic displays an excellent understanding of their pistol round buys. If we take a look at Warp Sonic's buy for the first pistol round, we can see that they purchase a Frenzy, one Smoke, and an Updraft. This purchase follows many of the principles that we outlined in the previous section. The Frenzy, when paired with Jet, is an extremely deadly combo due to the fact that Jet's kit is one of the best at closing distance to force close range duels. If a Jet throws her smoke and dashes towards you, you're now fighting in the perfect Frenzy range. Even on the defense side, Warp Sonic applies the same principle of planning their pistol round buy depending on what type of engagement they want to take. Warp's teammate generously drops them a Sheriff. The Sheriff on pistol rounds is one of the strongest weapons in the game due to how it outclasses every other pistol at long range. On pistol rounds, the Sheriff is able to one-shot, headshot any target at any range, no matter if they have light shields or not, as well as being able to kill non-armored targets with 2 body shots. The main weakness of the gun is close range duels because of the slow fire rate and low ammo capacity. But if we just set ourselves up to take specifically long range fights, we can fully utilize the advantage that the weapon has to offer. This is exactly what Warp Sonic does by taking an early peek at showers. Even though Warp does not find any early duels, the proactiveness of following a plan to use their Sheriff at the optimal range is something that every player should copy if they want to level up their pistol game. Anyways, let's bring ourselves back to the very first pistol round where Warp has a Frenzy.
Launching smoke. On me.
After a bit of rotating between A site and B site, Warp's team decides to go through the Showers teleporter. Understanding their role as a duelist, Warp smokes and dashes onto A site to create some space for their team to follow. The following moments, however, are where we feel that Warp could have further optimized their approach. Warp walks forward out of the smoke and is met with the enemy Phoenix on the other side. Warp attempts to make a flick, but misses as they both empty their Frenzy mags. The idea behind his encounter was fantastic, using the smoke and dash to close the distance so that they can take a close range duel where the Frenzy excels. But there were 2 key mistakes that made it so that Phoenix had the slight edge. First, Warp peeked out of their smoke by moving forward with the W key, rather than strafing out of the smoke with the A or D key. When pushing out of a smoke in this fashion, you put yourself at a slight disadvantage because of a couple of factors. The first is that your gun barrel sticks out in front of you, making it so that you're visible from outside the smoke much earlier. The second is that you position yourself in a way that limits your ability to start strafing if you do have to fight an enemy, since you have to first let go of the W key and then start strafing. If you look closely at how Warp takes this fight, this is exactly what happens when Warp flicks to the Phoenix and has to let go of W, and then start pressing D in order to employ gunfight movement. We can just cut the W key input by just peeking out of the smoke with strafing, and speaking of strafing, this is the second main mistake that Warp has made during this duel, not fully utilizing the run and gun capabilities of the Frenzy. Let's take a look at how both Warp and the Phoenix chose to move once the duel started. Warp had strafed a bit to the right while shooting and then crouched, whereas the Phoenix had fully committed to strafing right while shooting. The Frenzy has to be one of the best guns at the run and gun style of shooting when you're fighting in these point blank encounters. Always try to make yourself a harder target to shoot by fully maximizing your movement, forcing the enemy to have to move their crosshair as much as possible to keep tracking you. You can even see how this affects Warp's aim because they were unable to consistently track the Phoenix during his strafe to the right. Moving while shooting at this range is completely fine because the target is so close that the movement inaccuracy is not as impactful. Crouching as opposed to fully strafing is a much more subtle movement, making it much easier to readjust. This also ties back to the earlier point we made of peeking out of the smoke with a sideways movement instead of a forward movement. If Warp had peeked out of the smoke with a strafe, they could have effectively never stopped moving even after they had spotted the Phoenix and just started shooting. If you've ever watched any Valorant TikToks, you'll likely see that there's a somewhat similar resemblance to how the pop and swing functions. With the Frenzy, we mostly recommend crouch spraying whenever you're taking duels at a slightly further range where run and gun shooting is way too inaccurate. Understanding the strengths of your pistol and utilizing them to the fullest is something all players must know in order to win more pistol rounds. For our advanced level, we have Pengu, who is ranked Immortal and and is playing Killjoy on Haven. Let's take a look at how Pengu's team plays this very first pistol round.
Reloading. Short.
Alright, you wanna cut noise and start walking?
Deploying drone.
Ooh, flank.
Enemy spotted.
Powers out.
Reloading.
He's
flanking,
on,
window.
Platform.
Here. More.
One enemy remaining.
Last one was logs.
Right before the barriers drop, we can see that Pengu, Reyna, and Sova are positioned outside of A lobby. However, their Jet and Omen are waiting outside of C long with the spike. Let's see how this round works out. Sova shoots a dart towards long A while Pengu and Reyna push forward. This is when they spot the enemy Sage, who falls back into A site. On top of this, the enemy Fade tosses their haunt into long A and an oddly placed Omen smoke comes in. They just gain information that at least 2 players are in A site, as well as Omen is likely rotating to A site due to him placing his smoke towards long A. While this is all happening, Jet and Omen are quietly pushing into C site, and they actually walk into an empty bomb site. While Pengu's squad rotates back towards C site, they even find a free kill onto the Jet, who pushed up mid in an attempt to flank this potential A site execute. After the spike is planted, the round is comfortably in Pengu's favor. Why we want to highlight this round is because Pengu's team had a clear understanding of the pistol round meta and used that against their enemies to plan a perfect strategy. In ranked, the most common plan for attackers on pistol rounds is to 5-man rush a spike site. This is great for a couple of reasons. One, the pistol is not a great weapon for multi-fragging due to most of them having low ammo capacity, having a relatively low time to kill if not landing headshots, and most of them being semi-auto. So it's quite easy to overwhelm the defenders with sheer numbers, since it's not likely that they can consistently kill multiple targets quickly with a pistol. Another more honest reason is that most people are pretty lazy when it comes to strategy, especially on the very first round of a match. Attackers tend to choose to rush a site because it's way easier to just run forward than it is to come up with an actual strategy. Pengu's team uses this pistol round tendency perfectly by faking an A site rush while they secretly bring the spike towards C site. Fakes work exceptionally well whenever defenders are quick to rotate off of little information. In the defender's mind, the combination of knowing that 5-man site rushes are common on pistol rounds, plus 3 attackers being spotted towards A lobby is enough reasoning for them to commit quite early to rotate over towards A. You can clearly see this ideology shown by how quickly the enemies were willing to throw their utility towards long, and how fast the Jet had flanked looking to stop this fake hit. We know that trying to create some kind of plan with your teammates is quite hard in ranked, but that's what makes them so much more effective. Enemies don't believe that teams are willing to strategize a fake for the pistol round. This causes the enemies to rotate in the exact way your team is looking for so that you can get a free sight. In the second pistol round, Pengu has a frenzy and is positioned towards garage. After 3 were spotted towards A lobby, they decide to push out of garage to look for a cheeky flank. Even while his teammates are getting swarmed on A site, Pengu still clears the angles quite methodically and spots the enemy Omen holding flank. Pengu flicks and hits the initial headshot, but then starts to strafe to the right during the gunfight. As we had mentioned earlier in the intermediate section, the frenzy is insanely strong at moving while shooting, and you can see this in full effect. If we slow down the clip, we can see that after Pengu and Omen traded headshots, Pengu's movement made the Omen miss his subsequent bullets due to Pengu's movement making it harder for him to track. The Omen's bullets are landing where Pengu used to be rather than where they are in that current moment. You may start to see the similarities of this situation to Warp's fight, but instead, in this fight, the Omen is Warp and Pengu is the Phoenix. Pengu's next fight with the Sage, albeit with some luck, is another example that shows the strength that comes with moving and shooting with the frenzy. Pengu would have died to a single bullet, so focusing their efforts toward movement instead of aim was a perfect way to equalize this fight, even though luck was definitely involved. Sometimes you have to place yourself in a good situation to capitalize when luck does come your way. For our pro level, we'll be watching how Derke implements a couple of standard pistol round principles, as well as how he breaks them when the situation calls for it. While watching all of his different pistol rounds, we notice one common component throughout all of them, and that is Derke's implementation of crouch spamming during gunfights. If we take a close look at how he takes this one-on-one duel versus this Jet on Pearl, we can see that during the entirety of the fight, he keeps himself as mobile as he can by moving left and right slightly while adding in crouches whenever he can. This sporadic movement is key to having more impact during pistol duels. Most pistols have a pretty high time to kill if you aren't landing headshots. Therefore, the entire meta of pistol duels revolves around who can land more headshots. With this heavy emphasis on headshots being your win condition, this makes it so movement is a much higher priority because we want to make landing the headshots as hard as possible. This is where crouch spamming comes in. Unlike other tactical FPS games, Valorant has no limit to how fast or how often you can chain crouches. Every crouch will move at the same speed as the previous one. In addition, if you aren't strafing during the crouch or uncrouch animation, your bullets are completely accurate, making it one of the few movement options you have that leaves you completely accurate. This erratic movement will be a bit tough to get the hang of because of the higher APM required to pull it off. It also makes your own shots harder to line up since your movement affects your aim, but the trade-off is definitely worth it once you've mastered this technique. A good way to practice this is to hop into the range with a ghost or classic and turn on the shooting error graph in the video stats setting. Then proceed towards the bullseye and turn on the bot. Then practice trying to incorporate small strafes left and right with spamming crouch as well. Make sure that no blue appears on your graph, indicating that you are firing your bullets at the correct time so that they aren't being affected by the movement error. This exercise is all about learning how to sync the timing of your movement with the timing of when you want to fire your pistol. Let's hop into this split match where Derke is playing Raze to see how he breaks one of the most common pistol rules we've outlined here in this video, but for a good reason.
One was sitting. Can we swing
Let's
this?
throw down, yeah.
I'm waiting for you.
Nobody there. Default one.
One default.
I'm going left side.
Enemy remaining.
Nice! Let's go!
In the first pistol round of this match, Derke finds himself in a 2v2 retake after his neon dies in B main. He scales into B site while focusing his crosshair placement towards pillar. This is when the Sage and Omen decides to double peek into him. If we let the entire fight play out, we can see that while incorporating the crouch spam technique from earlier, he also sprays his ghost. At the beginner level, we talked thoroughly about how we shouldn't spray our pistols since the recoil causes our bullets to not land where our crosshair is placed. However, in this situation, it made a lot of sense to spam his ghost because there were two targets fighting him at the same time. When fighting more than one target at the same time, you aren't given the luxury of time to line up headshots onto your opponent, because now they have double the amount of chances at killing you. When you're in a disadvantageous fight, you have to take more risks in hope of ending the fight earlier because time is not on your side. The risk taken here is to spam fire the ghost in the hope that you can kill both targets quicker than they can kill you. This is the exact same concept as to why whenever people have to shoot multiple targets with their Vandal or Phantom, they usually opt for spray transfers rather than trying to reset their recoil to line up perfect headshots. They know that they have to gamble that their spray transfer is accurate enough to kill both targets because the threat level is too high to spend a second longer in the duel. In the second pistol round of this match, Derke applies the exact same technique of attempting to spray transfer his pistol onto two enemies as they both fight him straight on. It's even more apparent in this A Heaven clip because you can see that Derke at first tries to go for well-timed tap fires onto the Viper until he realizes that there are two targets, in which he then transitions to spraying his pistol and goes for the transfer onto the Sage after killing the Viper. In the game of Valorant, there are plenty of rules you can abide by to climbing the ranks, but as you go higher, knowing when to break them becomes just as important.